At midnight, the city shouted, "Happy New Year." On the 15th floor, a little boy was shouting for his mother. I still hear him more clearly than the fireworks. People think New Year's Eve is a busy night for firefighters because of drunk drivers and fireworks. They picture us racing from bar to bar, sirens screaming, saving fools from their own bad decisions. Sometimes it's like that. But the call I can't shake didn't come from a bar fight or a crashed car. It came from the fanciest building in our little city, the one place everybody liked to believe was safe. We only had one true high-rise in our first due area, Rivergate Tower, 19 stories of glass and polished stone, stuck down by the river like it got lost on its way to a bigger city. Offices on the lower floors, condos in the middle, a rooftop restaurant on top with big windows and bigger prices. People got married up there, signed deals, took anniversary pictures. It was supposed to be the shiny future of downtown. To me, it was just another place that could burn. We'd been there plenty of times, long before that New Year's. False alarms when someone burned toast on 12. A medical call for a lawyer who thought he was having a heart attack and turned out to be having his first honest moment in 20 years. A broken water line on 9 that turned a law firm into a kiddie pool. Every time, I'd look up through that glass atrium and think, this is going to be a nightmare if it ever really lights off. High-rises bother me in a way houses never did. In a house fire, most of your problems are within a couple of rooms and a couple of minutes. You get in, you get people out, you knock it down or you don't. But you have options. You can take a window, a door, the yard. In a tower, your choices get thin real fast. Smoke goes up, people go up. Fire finds the void spaces nobody thought about when they designed the lobby fountain. That New Year's Eve, though, I wasn't thinking about Rivergate. I was thinking about coffee. It was around 10:30. The station smelled like leftover chili and cold air sneaking in every time the bay door opened. Somebody had taped a sad little Happy New Year banner over the kitchen door, the kind you buy at the grocery store checkout because you feel guilty not decorating. Boone, our engineer, was at war with the coffee maker like it had personally insulted him. Marianne sat at the table, writing something in her little black notebook. She kept track of calls, hours, random thoughts, the way some people kept diaries. Tyler, our newest guy, sprawled on the couch in a t-shirt and gym shorts, flipping a stress ball from hand to hand, eyes on the muted TV where some big city fireworks test show was running. "You good, kid?" I asked him. He shrugged, still watching the screen. "Just waiting to see what breaks first, Cap. The year, or my legs." "You'll be fine," Marianne said without looking up. "Worst we'll get is a couple of bar fights and somebody who tried to deep-fry frozen wings in the sink." "You say that now," Boone grunted, smacking the side of the coffee maker. "Wait till somebody points Roman candles at a cedar shake roof." Tyler glanced at me. "Is it really that crazy?" he asked. "New Year's?" "Some years," I said. "Some are quiet. It's like the city flips a coin. Heads, we're slammed. Tails, we're bored out of our minds." He nodded, then hesitated. "If you had to pick your worst call for tonight, like the one you don't want." "Any place with a lot of people and only a few ways out," I said. "Nightclub, nursing home, Basement party with candles and no windows. Boone snorted. Or that damn tower. Marianne finally looked up. Rivergate? Mm-hmm. He jabbed a finger at the air, like he could point at it through the walls. Stack that many people in one glass box in the sky, and add alcohol? Yeah. I think about it every time I drive past. Tyler frowned. But it's sprinklered, right? Fire alarms, standpipes, all that high-rise stuff. Sure, I said. And airplanes have parachutes. Doesn't mean you want to test them at midnight on a holiday. He gave a nervous little laugh. Then his face got serious again. Cap, he said, what scares you most? On a fire, I mean. Getting lost inside, flashover, high-rise stuff. I studied him for a second. He wasn't making small talk. He wanted to know where the monsters actually lived. You want the honest answer? I said. That'd be nice. Collapse, I told him. Roofs, floors, things you trust suddenly not being there anymore. Fire tells you it's pissed. It gets louder, hotter, brighter. Floors don't talk. They just wait. He frowned, absorbing that. We didn't do much on that in the academy. Showed us some videos. Yeah, I said. Videos don't feel like the real thing. The tones dropped at 11:41 p.m. The sound cut through the station like someone had swung a metal bar. The stress ball slipped from Tyler's fingers and rolled under the couch. Boone abandoned the coffee maker mid-swear. Marianne's notebook snapped shut. Station 47, engine 47, ladder 12. The dispatcher's voice crackled from the speaker. Respond for a fire alarm activation. Rivergate Tower, 123 Riverfront Plaza. Multiple calls reporting smoke on upper floors. Unknown exact location. Timeout 23:41. Of course. Boone muttered something dark under his breath. Tyler was already wrestling his bunker pants up over his shorts. His hands shook just a little. Full high-rise pack, I said. Air, irons, high-rise bundle, extra flashlight. Treat it like the real thing until we know it isn't. I shrugged into my coat and helmet and felt the night shift back into focus around me. Whatever aches or irritations I'd had 10 seconds earlier slid into the background. The world narrowed to the rig, the call, the tower. We rolled out into a city already lighting itself on fire in smaller ways. Fireworks popped in side streets. A rocket screamed up from behind the old mills by the river and burst into blue and gold over the dark water. Downtown, strings of lights draped over bare trees and lampposts, blinking red and green and white. People in coats and party dresses spilled out of bars and restaurants, laughing too loud, faces pink from cold and drink. From the cab, I could see Rivergate Tower ahead, rising above the lower buildings. Most of the windows glowed warm yellow. The rooftop restaurant was brighter, a little band of light at the top, where people were already making toasts. For a second, it looked like every tourism picture the city had ever printed. Then I saw the smear of gray that didn't belong. It pushed out from near a corner, a couple of floors below the restaurant. Not the clean drifting plume you get from fireworks or cold breath. This was thicker, greasy, clinging to the glass and curling upward. Smoke about 15, maybe 16. Boone said quietly as we came off the bridge, "You see it?" I saw it. County, engine 47 is on scene. I said into the mic as we swung onto the plaza. We've got a 19-story high-rise, apparent smoke showing from around the 15th floor on the A side. Fire alarm sounding. We'll be establishing command and investigating. People were already spilling out onto the plaza by the time we rolled to a stop. Men in suits with ties half undone. Women in heels carrying their shoes. A restaurant staff in black aprons and bow ties. Some were crying, some laughing nervously, some holding up their phones to film us like we were part of the entertainment. Others just looked up at the tower with wide, stunned eyes. Ladder 12 pulled in behind us, their aerial already starting to rise, backup alarms beeping over the wail of our siren winding down. "Boone, you've got the rig," I said. "Get a line to the FDC and be ready for water up the standpipe. Tyler, grab the high-rise pack and irons. Marianne, you're with me on the nozzle team." We stepped out into the cold air. The building's front doors were propped open, the whoop-whoop-whoop of the fire alarm spilling out into the plaza, along with people's breath and voices. Red strobes flashed inside, turning every face into a jerky, stop-motion mask. A man in a suit with a name badge that read, "Manager," hurried toward me, talking before he even reached us. "It's on 15, he said, voice too high and too fast. "Panel shows smoke and heat on 15, maybe 14. There's a trash room there, we think. There's smoke in the hall, phones lighting up." "Slow down," I said, holding up a hand. "Anybody confirmed, trapped, or unaccounted for?" He swallowed. Some people called from their units, but the instructions say they should shelter in place, so we told them to stay. The restaurant on 19 is full. They're still up there." "Good," I said. "Keep them there unless we tell you otherwise. Are the main elevators recalled?" Yes, they came back to the lobby and locked, just like the drill." "Service elevators?" Marianne asked. He hesitated half a second too long. One of them stopped on 10, I think. Maintenance is checking." Meaning, nobody really knew. My radio crackled. "Command from dispatch, we have a 911 from a child on the 15th floor. Young male, says he's in the hallway and can't find his mother. Line dropped. We're trying to reestablish." That tightened something in my chest that had nothing to do with smoke. "Copy," I said. "Engine 47 will investigate the 15th floor for the source and search. Ladder 12, I want your crew to secure both stairwells, start clearing floors above 15, and keep people in their units, unless there's active fire impingement." Ladder 12's officer acknowledged. Boone was already flaking hose toward the fire department connection on the front of the building. We ducked into the lobby and headed straight for the fire control room. The alarm panel covered half a wall. Little red lights blinked angrily across a diagram of the building. "There," Marianne said, tracing them with a gloved finger. "Smoke detector, 15th floor, a wing and B-wing, heat in 15 trash room, water flow in that same zone. Some smoke detectors on 16 by the atrium. When did you last inspect your trash chutes?" I asked the manager. He looked like I'd asked him to name his childhood dog. They're on a schedule," he stammered. "The building manager." "Never mind," I said. "You have a generator?" "Yes, for the emergency lights and one elevator." "Keep it on," I said, "but do not send any elevator to 15. We're taking the stairs." High-rise operations are simple on paper. One stair for attack, one for evacuation. Set up a staging floor 2 below the fire. Move people and equipment like a conveyor belt. On New Year's Eve, with panicked tenants and party guests who'd had 3 glasses of champagne too many. The paper plans go out the window fast. We headed into the service stairwell. The air in there still felt clean and cool. The concrete walls made our boots echo. "Tyler, count floors," I said as we started up. Out loud, don't think, just count. 2, 3, 4, he said between breaths. On 8, I could hear faint muffled noises through the door. People on that level opening and closing apartment doors, arguing about whether the alarm was real this time. On 10, my knees reminded me I'd been doing this longer than was probably smart. On 12, we hit our first hint of smoke. It wasn't thick yet, just a grayish smear curling lazily at the ceiling, where air leaked under the door to 15 above us. But it said one thing clearly. The fire was ahead, not behind. That's always a small mercy. We stopped on the 14 landing to mask up. The routine was automatic after all these years. Hood down, mask up, strap, 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 helmet back on, gloves tight. The world shrank to the breath in my ears and the view through the slightly scratched lens of my mask. I put a gloved hand on the door to 15 and felt warm. Not searing, but not nothing either. A living warmth breathing through the metal. "Feel that?" I said. Tyler touched it, frowned, and nodded. He was learning the language of buildings. "Marianne, you ready?" I asked. She had the nozzle cradled, hose line snaked back down the stairs to where Boone was waiting to send us water. "Ready?" I cracked the door. Smoke poured in like it had been waiting, thick, brown-gray, pushing hard. Marianne opened the nozzle in a fog pattern and painted the upper third of the doorway, cooling the hot gases that wanted to come into our stairwell. The smoke lifted an inch. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make a path. We stepped into the 15th floor hallway. By design, it was probably beautiful. Soft carpet, tasteful art on the walls, recessed lighting, polished brass room numbers. In that moment, it looked like the inside of a smoker's lung. Smoke was banked halfway down from the ceiling, moving in slow, dirty waves. Exit signs glowed red through it, their lights smeared and doubled. Somewhere to the right, toward the end of the hall, I saw a brighter, pulsing light. The trash room. The fire door there stood crooked, half off its latch, wedged on something. Orange and yellow glowed around its edges, punching out in little fingers along the floor where fire had licked into the hall carpet. Overhead, a sprinkler inside the trash room sprayed a steady cone of water, sending up steam where it hit hot surfaces. It was helping, but it wasn't winning. And under the alarms and the hiss of water and the low roar of burning trash, I heard the sound that drove the rest of my night. "Mom, Mom," a child's voice, thin and high, somewhere down the hallway to the left. It cut right through everything else, like it always does when you've been doing this long enough. "Fire department," I shouted. "Keep yelling, kiddo. We're coming to you." Marianne gave me a quick look, then focused on the trash room. "I'll hold this," she said. "We can't let it roll the hall." "Tyler, stay glued to her," I said. "Short pushes. Cool the overhead first, then the fuel you can see. Do not chase it into the room. We own the hallway. not the whole world. They moved toward the right, line advancing in controlled pulses. I went left, following the voice. The air wasn't the worst I'd ever walked into, but it was bad enough. Heat licked at my gear. The smoke tasted of burnt paper, plastic, something chemical I couldn't quite place yet. I kept one hand on the wall to my right, and my light sweeping low. "Keep yelling," I called. "Let me hear where you are." "I'm here," the boy cried. "I'm by the big window. I can't see you." Big window. My stomach sank. Rivergate's design team had loved their glass. The building had an interior atrium, a big open shaft in the middle from 7 up to 18, topped by a glass skylight. In the promotional photos, sunlight poured down onto little trees and benches on the 7th-floor terrace, with families sitting and sipping coffee. Firefighters look at the same picture and see a chimney. On 15, the hallway curved around that atrium. Waist-high glass panels separated the corridor from the drop into open space. Nice during the day. During a fire, it meant smoke, and heat had a vertical highway, and nothing much in their way. As I rounded the bend, I saw the glass. What I didn't see was the atrium. It was full. Wall to wall, floor to skylight, the space was a churning column of dark smoke. It boiled upward, dragged by the heat and the broken building systems, arrowing toward the glass roof. I could feel it pulling air out of the hallway. The draft tugged at my coat. And there, outlined by the dull glow of exit lights and whatever leak of light there was from above, stood a little boy. Spider-Man pajama pants, bare feet on the wet carpet, one arm over his mouth and nose the way they teach in school, the other stretched out toward where he thought the stairwell was. His back was to the glass. He was closer to that atrium than he had any business being. "I got you, buddy," I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could. "Don't move. I'm coming right to you." He flinched toward my light, eyes wide and wet, 2 clean tracks through the soot on his cheeks. "I can't find my mom," he choked. "She went to get my sister and the door closed and—" "We'll look for her," I said. "Right now, your job is to let me carry you out of here. Deal?" He nodded, then coughed so hard his whole body shook. I closed the last few feet, scooped him up, and turned us both away from the glass. He latched onto my neck like a drowning swimmer, fingers digging into my collar. "You're heavy," I grunted. "They feed you bricks up here?" "Chicken nuggets," he said into my shoulder, voice muffled. "That'll do it." Behind us, the atrium exhaled. I heard the first small pop, sharp and high, somewhere far above. Glass under stress. A second later came a deeper sound, like a hammer on a big bell. The pressure in the hallway shifted. Smoke leaned toward the glass. "Cap, we've got fire running the ceiling panels by the trash room." Marianne's voice crackled in my ear. "We knocked the main body in the room, but it's eating the decor. We need to pull back toward the stair." "Do it," I said, already moving. "I've got 1 kid in my arms, heading your way. Ladder 12. Be advised we've got increasing heat on 15. Possible atrium involvement. Keep people in their units and out of that hallway." We didn't get far before the building decided to make things interesting. A glass panel along the atrium, maybe 20 feet behind us, snapped. It sounded like a rifle shot in a tunnel. A fraction of a second later, the panel blew inward, showering the floor in shards. A blast of hot gas and smoke punched into the corridor, shoving at our backs. I turned sideways, putting my shoulder and air pack between the boy and the blast. Tiny fragments of glass pinged off my helmet and bounced off my coat. A couple of larger chunks skittered across the carpet at our feet, hissing where they hit wet patches. The smoke changed character in that moment. What had been lazy, rolling layers became a hard, driving wind, all flowing one way, toward the open hole where the glass had been. The atrium sucked at the hallway like a big, ugly mouth. "Move," I said, mostly to myself. Not a place to stop and admire the architecture. We staggered forward, boots crunching on glass, slipping on wet carpet. Another panel failed closer to the trash room and blew inward, adding to the chaos. For a second, the alarms, the roar of fire, the crash of glass, and the boy's ragged breathing all piled on top of each other in my ears. Ahead, the glowing green exit sign above the stair door was the nicest thing I'd seen all night. Marianne and Tyler were there, at the hinge side of the door, hose line snaked around them. Marianne had the nozzle up, painting the ceiling above the doorway to keep fire and heat out of the stairwell. Tyler's shoulders were hunched, his whole body leaning into the effort of holding the line. "I've got him," I shouted. "Make a hole." They opened just enough space for me to push through with the boy. Inside the stairwell, the air was cooler and clearer. Not perfect, but better. Concrete felt good under my boots after the carpet carnival out there. I popped my mask seal just enough to get the boy a taste of cooler air. Then thought better of it and slid an extra small mask from my belt kit over his mouth and nose, hooking it to my spare line. It wasn't pretty, but it was better than nothing. "You're okay," I told him, squatting so we were eye to eye. "You did great. One of the other firefighters is going to take you down to meet the medics. I have to go see if I can find your mom." "Don't leave," he whispered, fingers still gripping my gear. "I'm not leaving," I said. "I'm coming back. That's a promise." I meant it when I said it. You should be careful with promises inside burning buildings. The fire doesn't care what you told a scared kid. But sometimes you have to give somebody something to hang on to. A crew from Ladder 12 clattered up the stairs as I finished speaking. One of their guys, O'Hara, took one look at the boy and just held out his arms. "I got him, Cap," he said. "We'll get him down." "Treat him like gold," I said. "He looks more like nuggets," O'Hara replied, and that got the ghost of a smile out of the kid. Then they were gone, heading down toward the lobby, and air and noise, and a mother who had no idea yet whether her boy was alive. Marianne looked at me. Even with her mask on, I could read the question in the set of her shoulders. "How much more?" she asked. "Short answer or long one," I said. "We don't have time for long." "Quick primary, this floor only," I said. "Nearest units to the fire room get priority. Closed, cool doors with no reported problems stay shut. We are not hugging that atrium. If this thing gets into the voids, it's going to get unpredictable fast." She nodded once. "Then let's go earn our pay." We worked the closest apartments like a checklist. Some doors opened to faces pale with fear and anger and confusion. We told them all the same thing. Stay inside. Wet towels at the base of the door. Stay low. Don't come into the hallway unless you see flames, or we tell you to. The building is designed for you to be safer in there than out here right now. Some people argued. They wanted to leave. They wanted to see. They wanted to get down those stairs, no matter what we said. I had exactly zero energy for arguments. You step into that hall and fall into the atrium. You're going down 7 floors head first, I told one man in a nice robe who thought he could bully his way past us. Get away from the door. He listened. Fear can do what politeness can't. The unit closest to the trash room had smoke, pushing from under the door hard enough to look like someone was blowing through a straw. The knob was warm. We forced it and got a face full of heat. Inside, the fire had licked up curtains and a sofa along the wall, working its way across cheap laminate flooring toward the doorway. Sprinklers chattered overhead, raining down water. Steam and smoke turned the room into a gray soup. Quick sweep, I said. Right hand, then left. Don't fall in love with it. We crawled fast. No one on the couch, no one behind it. Bedroom door closed and cool. Bathroom empty. Nobody sprawled in the hallway. We backed out and pulled the door as shut as we could, letting the water do the rest. Somewhere above us, the glass at the top of the atrium gave up more ground. You could feel the tower flinch every time a panel blew. The air in the hallway would rush, then swirl, then settle again into a new pattern. Command to all interior units. The chief's voice came over the radio. Be advised, we have confirmed glass failure in the atrium on multiple floors. Exterior crews are hitting visible fire from the A and C sides. Protect your stairs. We are not operating along the atrium edge above the 7th floor, unless absolutely necessary. I thought of that little boy standing with his back to the glass and felt my stomach roll. We finished what we could in a few more minutes that felt like an hour. Then we dragged our line back into the stairwell, let the door close, and stood there on the landing, catching our breath, listening to the muffled chaos on the other side. Up or down? Tyler asked, leaning against the wall. Sweat had carved little rivers through the soot on his forehead under the rim of his helmet. Up, I said. We've taken care of the fire's front door for now. Our next problem is a couple hundred people upstairs who are either going to stay put like they're supposed to, or all decide to come down anyway. Either way, they're coming through our stair. We went up. On 16, the air in the stairwell was a little warmer, but still workable. On 17, the door flew open just as we reached it, and a wave of human beings tried to pour through. They were dressed mostly in black and sparkles, restaurant people and their guests. Sequined dresses, too shiny shoes, crooked bow ties, paper hats. The alarms had turned their party into a stampede. Stop, I roared, planting my feet and throwing my arm out across the doorway like a railroad crossing bar. One side only, right-hand side down, single file, hands on the rail. You run, you fall, we step over you. Move steady, not stupid. They actually slowed. Not much, but enough. Panic is like fire. If you let it get the right fuel and the right airflow, it goes wild. If you choke it down a little, give it boundaries, it can be manageable. Look at me, I said to a woman near the front. Her mascara streaked. hair falling out of an updo. You're going to walk down this stair at a normal pace. You're not going to scream. You're going to help the person in front of you if they stumble, and you're not going to shove them. You do that. You live. Fair. She nodded, breathing hard. Fair. Good. Set the example. We became traffic cops in gear. Kids on the inside, hands on the wall. I called. If you feel tired, sit for a second on a landing and then rejoin. Don't stop in the middle. There are people behind you who want to go home, too. In the stream of faces, I saw a teenage girl come down the stairs, eyes wide, glitter on her cheeks. She clutched her phone in one hand and a small handbag in the other, like those were going to save her tonight. "Hey," I said, stopping her for half a second. "You from 15? She nodded. "We were at the restaurant. My little brother, He's out," I said. "He's with the medics. Keep going. Your mom's probably already on the plaza." Her knees wobbled. For a second, I thought she was going to collapse, but she pulled herself together and kept moving, tears now mixing with her makeup. "You sure?" Tyler murmured as she passed. "If he wasn't," I said, "we'd be hearing about it already." We controlled that flow for what felt like forever. But later, somebody told me it was under 15 minutes from the first alarm to the last diner out of the restaurant. Time stretches in smoke. By the time the stream of people slowed to a trickle, the outside crews had knocked down most of the visible fire along the atrium windows. The building still smoked, but it had lost its hardest edge. The worst of the heat had been beaten back into the trash room, the chutes, and some unlucky decorative soffits. Eventually, we got the order to start working our way back down, checking for any stragglers in the stairwells and on the shelter-in-place floors. A couple of elderly residents needed help, down from 11 and 9. We moved them slowly, one step at a time, with Tyler carrying one woman's little dog tucked into his coat, like a football. When we finally hit the lobby again, my legs felt like they were made of rubber bands and broken glass. The air tasted like cold and exhaust, and a little leftover smoke. It was the sweetest thing I'd had in my mouth all night. Medics had set up a little triage area off to the side. A handful of people sat on folding chairs with oxygen masks on, blankets around their shoulders. Someone had dragged out a cart with water bottles. The Happy New Year sign in the lobby looked like a bad joke now. I found the boy near the back, wrapped in a blanket that reached his ankles. His Spider-Man pajamas were streaked gray. He had a pediatric mask over his face and a stuffed dog clutched in one hand, the kind the hospital sometimes kept around for kids. His mother knelt in front of him, both hands on his knees like she was afraid he'd float away. She saw me and surged to her feet, nearly knocking over the medic who was checking the boy's vitals. She hugged me hard enough that my SCBA cylinder thunked unpleasantly into my ribs. "Thank you." She sobbed into my coat. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "I just happened to be the one near him," I said, patting her back awkwardly. "Lots of people did their jobs tonight." She pulled back just enough to look at me, eyes red and fierce. "You went up there," she said. "Everybody else was coming down, and you went up. Don't you dare tell me that's nothing." I didn't argue. Sometimes it's better to let people believe in simple versions of the story. The boy, Jamie, I learned his name later, pushed his mask down to his chin, and squinted up at me. "You sounded taller on the radio," he said. That made me laugh. A short, surprised sound. "I get that a lot," I told him. "How's the breathing?" "Bernie," he said, "but better." "Good. Keep that mask on. It's your best friend right now." Behind me, Boone stuck his head into the triage area. Soot had turned his usually pale face nearly black, leaving only 2 white grooves where his mask had been. "Cap," he called. "Chief's looking for you." Of course he was. Outside, the plaza looked like the morning after a parade. Jose lines snaked across the concrete, draining slowly. The ladder trucks had their aerials bedded again. The tower's upper floors were dark in patches where smoke had stained the outside, or where the power had been killed. Steam drifted lazily from broken windows and the jagged gaps where atrium glass had failed. The chief stood near his SUV, helmet off, white hair plastered to his head with sweat. He had a clipboard in one hand, and that look on his face that says, "I'm glad you're alive. Now tell me exactly how close we came to losing you." "You look like something the cat dragged in," he said, by way of greeting. "Cat would have better taste," I said. "We out of the woods?" "Mostly," he said. "Hot spots in the chutes and some voids. But nothing we can't handle from here, with some opening up and water. No fatalities reported. Couple of smoke inhalations. 1 broken ankle on the stairs." "Not bad for a night when everything lined up wrong," I said. He nodded slowly. "Walk me through 15, he said. "From the time you hit the door to the time you came back to the stair." So I did. I talked about the warmth of the door, the conditions in the hall, the half-open trash room, the kid's voice, the atrium full of smoke. I told him about the glass bowing, the failures, the pressure changes. I told him about sending the boy down and staying up, about the decisions I'd made on how far to search. He listened without interrupting much, just the occasional question to sharpen a detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, looking up at the darkened band where 15 and 16 sat. "You pushed it," he said eventually. "Yeah," I said. "We did. You pushed it, and you brought people out," he said. "And the building didn't need anybody. I can live with that." "So can I said. "But I'll be thinking about that atrium for a long time." "Me too," he said. "We're going to have some conversations with the owners about those decorative panels and that glass. Sprinklers did their job, mostly. Chute didn't. Human beings sure didn't. But for tonight, we'll call it a win." We didn't clear the scene until almost dawn. By then the fireworks were long over. Street sweepers were out on Main, sucking up confetti and broken glass. The restaurants had their chairs on tables and their trash bags at the curb, like nothing much had happened besides another holiday. Back at the station, we peeled out of gear stiffly. My socks squished in my boots. My shoulders felt like someone had hung sandbags off them. Tyler sat on the bench by his locker, half-turned, staring at nothing. "You okay?" I asked, dropping onto the bench across from him. He blinked, coming back from wherever his head had gone. "I keep seeing him," he said, standing there by the glass. "I keep thinking, if the timing had been just a little different." "Then somebody else would have gone for him," I said. "Or he would have ducked into a unit, or we'd be writing a different report. All true. But what actually happened is we heard him. We got to him. and he's breathing." He frowned. "That promise you made him about his mom. What if we hadn't found her? What if she'd—" "Then I'd have carried that too," I said, "along with everything else. That's the part nobody tells you in recruitment brochures. You don't just carry hose and ladders. You carry stories that don't always end the way you want." He was quiet for a moment. "Earlier," he said, "I asked you what scares you most. You said collapse. Still true?" "Oh yeah," I said. "This just added a new chapter. Glass can collapse too. Stairs, plans, people's calm, all of it." He nodded slowly. "Do you think I did okay? Up there? You counted floors without me reminding you," I said. "You stayed on Marianne's hip with that line and didn't chase it into the room. You didn't bolt when the glass blew. That's more than okay." He exhaled hard, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I thought I was going to throw up on the 17th landing when all those people came at us. "You can throw up later," I said. "New Year's tradition. Now try to sleep." I didn't sleep much. I rarely did after calls like that. I lay in the dark and watched the red digits on the wall clock jump. Every time I started to drift, I'd see that hallway again. The atrium glass, the smoke boiling, the boys' bare toes on the wet carpet. A few days later, when the inspections and reports and interviews slowed down, I went back to Rivergate. Not on a rig, just in my own truck, in jeans and an old jacket. The plaza was open again. People went in and out like normal, carrying briefcases and gym bags and grocery sacks. The only visible signs of what had happened were some boarded-up sections of atrium glass and a faint discoloration on the stone where smoke had stained it. Inside, machines hummed quietly, big air scrubbers sucking at the building's lungs. Someone had worked hard to make the place smell like lemon cleaner instead of wet ash. The manager met me in the lobby and shook my hand so hard I thought he'd break something. "They've been asking about you," he said. "The family from 15. We rode up in the elevator together. I let him push the button. Old habits die hard. On 15, most of the damage had been patched over. New paint, new ceiling tiles. The carpet was still being replaced in sections where it had been soaked or burned. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you might think it was just a remodel." He led me to a door near the bend in the hall, away from the shiny new glass panels they'd already installed. Inside, the condo was neat, lived in. A TV played a cartoon quietly. The couch had a couple of new scorch marks covered by a throw blanket. A small Christmas tree still stood in the corner, lights unplugged, one side a little browned. Jamie sat at the coffee table, coloring something with intense focus. His Spider-Man pajamas had been replaced by sweatpants and a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it. His hair had grown out just enough to start sticking up in the back. His mother stood when we came in. She hugged me again, not quite as fiercely as that night, but close. "I wanted him to see you," she said, stepping back, when it wasn't all sirens and smoke. Jamie looked up from his drawing. He studied me for a moment, then picked up a small toy fire truck from the table and held it up. "Mom says you're why I get this," he said. "She says I'm not allowed to set it on fire." "Listen to your mom," I said. "She's right more than we are." He set the truck down carefully. "I yelled," he said. "On the phone. They told me to. They said, "Don't hang up. Keep yelling." "You did exactly what you were supposed to," I said. "You yelled, and we listened. That's how this works when it goes right." He considered that, then nodded. "Are you scared up there?" he asked. "In the smoke?" "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes we're scared before we even get there. The trick isn't not being scared. It's doing what you're trained to do anyway." He seemed satisfied with that. Kids his age understand more about fear than most adults admit to. I didn't stay long. You never do. There's a fine line between letting people say thank you and letting it rewrite the story in your own head into something cleaner than it really was. The truth was messier. A building full of people got lucky that night. Lucky that the fireworks didn't start a fire on a balcony instead. Lucky that the trash room sprinkler worked. Lucky that a little boy yelled instead of hiding in a closet. Lucky that the glass waited to fail until after he was off that carpet. We did our jobs. The systems did some of theirs. Luck did the rest. Now when New Year's Eve rolls around and the first firecracker pops outside my window, my wife will sometimes glance at me and ask, "You okay?" "I'm fine," I say. What I don't say is that in my head, I'm hearing alarms instead of fireworks. I'm seeing a hallway on 15, an atrium full of churning smoke. A boy in Spider-Man pajamas at the edge of a drop he doesn't even know is there. Fire doesn't care that it's a holiday. It doesn't care that your tower is new and expensive, or that the restaurant on 19 is booked solid months in advance, or that the year is supposed to start fresh and clean. It just waits for someone to drop a bag of smoldering fireworks in the wrong chute at the wrong time. People ask me sometimes, now that I'm retired, what call sticks with me the most. They expect stories about huge warehouse fires, interstate pileups, big disasters that make the news. I've got those. But the one that lives close to the surface is that ordinary-looking night wrapped around an ordinary-looking building, where everything was just a half step away from going much, much worse. At midnight, the city shouted, "Happy New Year." On the 15th floor, a little boy shouted for his mother. We heard him. That's the part of that night I hold on to when the fireworks start popping and the old ghosts come knocking.